continues. Now, let us concentrate more on Latvia, and we are going to continue with the expert discussion with the involvement of some local experts, how media literacy has been researched in Latvia. What are the challenges? Is there a need for a common media literacy research, and what research data is currently lacking for implementers and cooperation partners, and whether we need a united single methodology or leadership or coordination. This all is going to be discussed with Klinta Ločmele, media literacy expert, head of the IREX Baltic Media Literacy Program at the University of Latvia, and she's also docent in the University of Latvia and also in Vidzeme University, and she also directs the projects of media literacy for various groups of society. Klinta, hello. Also, in our conversation, we're going to have Agnes Davidson, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences at Vidzeme University, Associate Professor and Researcher. And Riga Stradiņš University, Associate Professor in Faculty of Communication, Ilva Skulte, and has also worked as a journalist. Now for 20 years she works in communication. Faculty of Communication, as a researcher, as an educator, Ilva Skulte. And another colleague, assistant professor and researcher of Rezekne Academy of Technologies, and she is also teaching courses of media, and she performs research, and she has implemented various projects for school children in media literacy, Sandra Murinska. And the first direction I would like to look at is what, for you, our participants, what is your experience in media literacy research? Maybe not more than 5 minutes you could talk about your experience. Klinta Ločmele. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to participate also in this panel. My presentation will be an introduction because I believe that my colleagues are experienced in media literacy field. They will be able to comment on the details, but talking about the research in Latvia, I must say that it is approximately for 5 and 6 years they have been conducted. This is the road we have gone. And of course, there were some examples when we discussed media literacy 10 to 11 years ago. We asked the educators how they, the teachers, how they are devoting to the topic of media literacy. And in 2017 we had research conducted by Ministry of Culture, and at that time I worked there and we performed a methodology, and it was a big challenge because we didn't have anywhere to look. We could only take from the experience from abroad, and this was like a puzzle which consisted of many pieces, and it was a challenge to ask these more than 10 questions regarding the demographics, and also included there these media literacy aspects. And how to put together this, do we go the quantitative or qualitative way, and also in well, if they're representative, then it is really good that we are allowed to obtain the tendencies, the data about tendencies, and what are the disadvantages, and how the public assesses their own media literacy. This is how the cat, this is the metaphor how cat evaluates their own abilities. Maybe they're overconfident. And also about the time, when, and because people have this subjective perception. For example, in 2017, UNESCO made research with young people, teenagers and kids. They asked the question, how long do kids spend in social media? So 1/5 of the people said that in YouTube they spend more than 5 hours a day. But we need to assess how we can trust this. If we do not look at the statistics in the app on the phone, then whether we can trust this data or can we trust their replies? Because it is definitely a subjective reply they provided. So self-assessment, we also here see the TV3 publication, how you can assess your own ability to identify misinformation regarding COVID-19. And the people identified it like that. And also in this slide you can see 3 research which are compared between each other since 2017 until the end of last year. 2 of them were performed by the Ministry of Culture, 1 of them at the University of Latvia, and I was also involved in that team of researchers. And I knowingly included the same question because I wanted to compare it and how under the impact of pandemics, so how people assess their own ability to rather well identify which information is trustworthy and which is fake. It is self-assessment nevertheless, the tendencies we see from it, and then we can look more in detail. But here, with the quantitative research, we cannot find out anything about motivation, interpretation, reasons why it is like that. For example, here, the research from 2017 and 2019, we see that the ratio has not changed of the respondents who admit that they do not have sufficient knowledge in order to critically assess the information. We can create chart with age groups, but we will never find out why. How do they explain themselves? Are they even interested in finding out the reasons or why the information is missing? So here we have research, qualitative approach research, and in on the level of state institutions we had structural interviews, focus groups, and also children and teenager research, where we had both quantitative indicators and also we conducted interviews in order to receive more information, more objective information, what the teenagers are telling themselves, not just ticking one of the answers. And at the end, I would like to say that about the future, what is the ideal model, how we can obtain both quantitative, representative data, which would show very well the tendencies and opinions of people about some particular topic, and how we could supplement them with qualitative research and focus groups. It is not only dry charts and numbers, but there we would like to find out more how the person, like why the person responded in one or another way. The colleague from Ofcom, I am, well, for me, I like very much these longitudinal studies. It is when you, over the longer period of time, research how the perception of the issue changes, how media consumption changes, and looking at the future perspective at this particular point in Latvia, I think we should consider performing such research. And from my part, the last one, very important is the regularity of the research. We were successful at conducting research in 2017 when I worked in the Ministry of Culture, because we had money left from a larger media literacy project. Unfortunately now the research is new, and it is absurd that we didn't have any funding, and we have to also refer to the 4-year-old research, because the apps which children, school children, teenagers mentioned, they are non-existent. However, TikTok platform currently is existing. In that previous research it was not included. And if we are talking about large media literacy research conducted by the Ministry of Culture, at least in the previous planning period, after every 3 years it is conducted, then I would say that media literacy, which is a very dynamic environment where new threats can come very quickly along, and I think if there's no funding, then maybe each 2 years we should conduct. If not, then the best would be to every year perform such research to make this and complete this puzzle anew every year. This is all from my part. Thank you. And in the discussion, I will also contribute. Thank you for replying to so many questions. And now we are addressing Professor Agnes Davidsone to ask her experience so far in media literacy research in Latvia. Yes, thank you. Upon preparation for today, I put it together for myself how in the world they are researching the media literacy, how they accumulate experience, and what can we do in Latvia. And I have 6 types of research which have common methods and also maybe common results we can obtain. What Klinta talked about, this is the self-assessment research, probably representative and sometimes not representative selections where people are asked different questions and they reply and assess their own skills from which we can draw our conclusions. The next thing, how it is being researched, is by completing various tasks, the simulations of various situations, which we are not going to receive data in large groups researched, but not maybe in media literacy, but digital literacy. Maybe this is more related to, and it is slightly complicated. This is why I would, what Klinta also touched upon, and how the teachers integrate in their programs, in their practice, the facilitation of media literacy. There are researchers with natural interventions, and also parents is an interesting group, how they facilitate in their children, how their peers influence, and in the world we see such research, how media literacy then develops in these young people. Also yesterday we heard a lot about the large IREX program and project with young people prepared who teach their own peers, and this is educative intervention where they impact, and then we look at the results. And then there is fact checkers also. I have not seen it in Latvia with a broad research field, and it is when you check, and also previously we had the session with media representatives, and there this question was also talked about. What is the media role? Then media literacy questions in formal education. Yesterday also several times it was mentioned how the media literacy questions are integrated and involved in, and then we can measure how it is being facilitated. What is also interesting, what we do in Vidzeme University, we can look at media literacy in the context of other literacies, social literacies. One of them is science literacy, and we have looked very broad at the topic of social involvement and various forms thereof. One other thing is, which in Latvia we see very little, but we focus on individual. What is the individual media literacy? It is important to look at the context, to look at how various state institutions work, NGOs, and does it facilitate in various ways the media literacy development of an individual in one or another direction.
And we have emphasis on various interventions, also resilience against the disinformation, and it if in a country, in our national level, we have different priorities. We also promote skills at different levels. So this was just in a short, so that we have a wider experience and outlook how the media can be researched. Thank you. That's all from my side. Okay. Thank you very much. We follow this story. And maybe we can ask Agnes, there was something with your mic, some extra sounds, but now we are inviting our next speaker to make a short outlook at what is your experience in researching media literacy and what are the most important ideas you would like to mention. But we would need a small signal whether the presentation is prepared. Is the presentation ready? Yes, it looks that everything is good. Saviev Skulta is going to be our next speaker. Hello again. Thank you. Thank you for giving the floor. I would like to add to what said Klinta Ločmele said, who said that this is like a flow. Yes, the challenges are mainly related um, that what we now say, what is media literacy, it differs. Also, Agnes said that the directions of funding differ and the different policies of and priorities of media policy. And so far, media were researched in a way that we were jumping from one ditch to another. So we were um, sticking to the topical things, but we didn't look and didn't pay attention this complex puzzle as a whole. And of course, it is hard to see it, and maybe to some extent this is even impossible. So we have to be clear and understand how far we are with specific research and which piece of puzzle we are trying to cover. The second thing I would like to emphasize is that when we speak about researching media literacy in general, I heard from the previous speakers that this is um, the changing. So topicality, which is now in our public, is related to the fact that right now the perceptions and of the public based on the education they have acquired are to some extent are a bit too late because the media environment is changing and more and more apps are at the disposal of users, and we face the situation that again the research is bit too late and have not achieved the goals we had set, and we are about 2 years late. And talking about the experience of the Stradins University, um, usually when I say media literacy, I would like to specify in which area those research was done, because we can look at the entrance of digital media and social media specifics, and also, for example, uh, various groups of users and how young people use the media and teachers as an audience, and how they can be digitally educated, and how children are taught and how all these things are included in the curriculum. So all this kind of is connected to media literacy, but again, each of them are separate areas which are researched and have been researched in my experience since 2008, when it was the first time when I faced and so the London new media literacy school and all the challenges they had outlined and included in their programs since the second part of the 1990s. But Talking about Stradins University research, I would like to highlight the one we did in 2019 together with SKDS, the research about perception of media literacy in the public. And in this research, we both tried to survey how interested are various groups of population in media literacy. And here and at the bottom you can see that what are the groups, and the groups are very different in their composition. Uh, so very interested are quite a lot of people. 30% are more interested than not, and part of the society also are not interested or cannot say anything. In this study, we also drew attention to a question that could be very interesting also to discuss today, that interest and motivation in media literacy. And so, because we are interested in that, we asked many questions. Why would people want, and how do they see the value as media literacy in their daily lives? So, what are the risks and what are the threats for individual safety and well-being? Um, can be if there is a low level of media literacy. And here you can see that mostly people think about skills to uh, use, where to turn for help. People see two aspects. So first they see individual safety and well-being, and, and secondly, or the main, they understand use of various apps and media. This they consider as media literacy. An aspect as critical thinking was interesting only for 28%, or also issues related to the ethics of mass media. Only 7% linked it to media literacy and considered it important. And the last from this wide research I wanted to touch upon is that we not only paid attention to people assessment of knowledge, but I also wanted to link together them, and we created four groups according to two aspects. So how people assess their knowledge and how much interested in media literacy they are. And here we saw that most of the population of Latvia are not interested. They don't consider themselves knowing and are also not interested. And if we attach it to demography, the demography, it was a man older than 45, and also people with basic education or vocational education with low or average income level, and mainly the ones who live outside of Riga. So for technical and language, there wasn't any. So my idea is to think, how do we address people who are not interested and also don't know, and who can be addressed by media literacy measures and projects. We saw that people mainly turn to schools and universities as to the institutions which they consider should be taking care of the media literacy, and also consider that this is a field of interest for younger people. And society as general don't see how it is possible to reach with media literacy measures those people who need it the most. And so that has to be taken into account when we are offering those measures. And that's all from my side. Looking forward to the discussion. And now we are back. The batteries for the mics are changed and we are returning back. And so let us try to be as concise as possible. And of course, we are also grateful for the depth we heard from you. But now I would like to ask Sandra Murinska, the assistant professor and researcher of Rezek Academy of Technology. So, how do you see, how far are you in promoting and providing media literacy? So yes, we have to move towards the discussion, and now I would like to continue what the previous speaker Eva said and also what the colleagues said. So I totally agree, and I don't see any need to repeat and say this something my colleagues already said about qualitative and quantitative research methods that can be used for research. But the second thing where I see that there is a misunderstanding and not understanding in the public, and also contradictions between the researchers, is how we improve the media literacy and how we see this concept altogether. And so the last image, do I, as a person, am interested in media literacy? Here I want also to emphasize that understanding what is media literacy, this understanding is very diverse. So uh, some people think that um, there uh, uh, there are so many aspects, and so let us look at those. So first is knowledge about mass media. So do we look at them as a separate structure, as a social unit? How do we see them? Because my experience shows when I have organized various training programs for teachers, then I have received an opinion from teachers who say, how can I teach the media literacy aspects because I wasn't taught this at school. So we understand this generation of teachers who have not perceived mass media as a separate object they can teach about. Yes, separate, and several times we use mass media as a source for uh, for the lessons, the material we can analyze, but we don't have understanding about the work of media. The second group or block of the issues is assessing and evaluating the content. What are the analytical skills of the public? Is population able and have do they possess critical thinking skills? And the next one is uh, are the public able to distinguish fake news and these trends of disinformation. And the last one, how we create the content by ourselves. And those four directions are the ones which we in Rezekne Technology Academy and also together with other projects, together with colleagues, we have drawn attention to. And of course, the research was in a direct way and also indirectly. So directly, we have organized surveys, I must say, in a narrower context and also in a wider context. So in narrower context, those are the bachelor's and master's theses of our students. And one of the most topical projects where we also researched and studied media literacy is the state media research project, and we analyzed the media literacy of the public through the questions I already spoke before. And one of those questions was, how do the public and does the public trust mass media? So everything starts with dividing this notion into two parts. First is an object and another is skill. So we assess our skills, how we use the mass media, and then what is our knowledge and attitude towards the mass media. And this research proved that most part of the public in Latvia don't trust mass media, don't trust journalists. Journalists were chosen as untrustworthy subjects. So we have to strengthen the knowledge of the notion what is high quality journalism, what is professional journalism, and then we can base our study also on various approaches and mass media communication theories, because each researcher looks at this from their own point of view. That can be psychology studies and cultural studies, because communication science is very fragmented, or vice versa, consists of various areas. So these research aspects right now are very wide, and all my above mentioned factors are taken into the consideration. And also a very short note about the research which was done in 2016. We, together with colleagues, did the media research project in Latvia and also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And one of the first questions what we asked was about trusting the mass media. So how do the public see their mass media? And those 5 years ago in Bosnia and Herzegovina, uh, uh, mainly young people participated, 19 to 35-year-old. Those I want to call young people, and those were the students of the university. And I must say that in Latvia, the attitude towards mass media wasn't so critical in comparison with Bosnia. So in Latvia, people tended to trust more. Okay, that's in short. Thank you to Sandra. And now we are asking, and I will ask all of you answer one question. Please do it shortly because there is no more time. But just try to be very concise and answer the question. So, in order to keep this intention and driving towards the goal. So how do we do it? Basically, there should be some studies and research, and so it means that they have to be coordinated and also um, sustainable for not for just for short term, but also longer term. So can you outline the key words and key topics who has to do these studies related to the media literacy research and media policy research and so on. So which side would you like to? Because it would mean financing and also comparability and so on. So let us start with the same order. Klinta, please. Similar to the news services, the more news services, the more opinions. And so also it is good if there were several institutions organizing this research. And the more the better. Of course, we cannot talk about one large super mega research where all the researchers join together and create some kind of research based on which the policy planning documents can be developed. But my vision is that it is very good if there are several centers that are researching, and both of them, each of them have different um, focuses, and so we can look at various aspects. Yes, like we spoke about the puzzle, it is very different, and we can understand um, that yes, there will be various parties, but still there should be some kind of center so that it's not so fragmented. So I'm asking Agnes Davidson, what do you think? Yes, it continues yesterday's discussion which we started about policy coordinating in the state as a whole. And it also includes research. And the largest role, of course, is played by the universities. And talking about the coordination, we haven't finished this discussion because that could be this interinstitutional coordination center or also the institution which is closer to the president. This is what we heard yesterday. So not the researchers can decide how to organize this coordinating function, but I absolutely agree that this research has to be based on research, this notions and conclusions, and the policy has to be based on research, and it will help us to move forward. And as all of us in this discussion have outlined that media literacy is a very, very large and complex phenomenon. And we have to look both at individual, at the environment, and also context in which the media literacy is promoted, limited, or something else. That there are some promotion mechanisms and also regulatory network, school programs, and so on, and also an individual, because we shouldn't be forgetting that we mustn't just forget on skills or knowledge which are specific for the media sector and the content we are consuming. Sandra already outlined that there are great cognitive theories of media literacy, and they very clearly show that when you equip the individual with specific knowledge, we will not make sure that they will act as media literate individuals. We know that there are people who are aware that this information is fake. There are some and some problems, but they still continue believing in this information and sharing because there are some my internal psychological factors which determine that I do something. So this is a little in contribution from my side. Yes, very, very useful, but I will try to reformulate the question, turning to the next speaker. So talking about this puzzle, what to do with this wide area, wide sector to get some successful results in developing the media policy from the point of view of research? First of all, I would like to look from the point of researchers. I would like to say that conclusions of the research has to be taken into account when developing a policy, and that has to be outlined and highlighted. Also, I would like to outline that there is a very important group, those who are older than 50, because our research showed that this is a group that are not interested, or also they acknowledge they are not aware, or they don't have knowledge about mass media. And for example, now when we speak about the vaccination, a lot can be done through the internet, but we have to know that that is the group which is not in very familiar terms with the internet, and they basically don't are not reached through the internet. So we have to also pay attention and think how to reach them. And number three, what Agnes already outlined, and I will more precisely say that we need to do various experimental research and simulative environments, how to see how the user is selecting the information, and what I am personally interested is to look at this critical reading and refocus as researchers from large representative research to research which goes into the depths and try to understand the activities of people. That's all from me. Thank you. Thank you, Ilva. Sandra, how do you see what is the way and the link that has to be between the research and policy development? How it could more successfully operate so that the policy is based on research? How do you see it? Yes, it has to be very effectively working, effective structural unit that oversees and monitors all the sector, so science and tertiary education. First of all, the science, considering how much the science is financially supported. So this area, and maybe you also noticed in yesterday's discussions that education is very important, and representatives of this sector to be able to give the vision. So looking at teachers and also students media literacy level, how to promote it at school, because I want to return again to what I said, that I agree to the statement that media literacy is a result of media education, and we have to work with that. And by that, if there is a one united common structure which sees the whole field and sees the responsible areas. And then we also can speak about the funding for a specific research, and also adding to what Ilva and Agnes said, I even consider that we shouldn't narrow down and agree, because we shouldn't agree which specific direction we will research. No, there are various aspects and there are no limits how we can do it, and we involve and various groups of the public, but we know that understanding what is media literacy is quite weird. Thank you very much for going into depth. Thank you for not um, staying with my general questions. Thank you very much to all the participants in the discussion. Now we go further. In a moment, we will continue and we will hear a special speech, how to fight against disinformation in the digital age. We will have also an experts discussion, and also from large platforms, Google and Facebook, we will ask about their opinion, how to fight against disinformation. And you are also invited to express your opinion and ask your questions via chat boxes. So we will have also a high-level expert discussion about trusting the media. That will also be during this conference. So now there will be a 10 minutes break, and after 10 minutes, let's continue.